Hey, welcome to the BK Show podcast. This is episode number 43, and today I'm joined by my good friend Neil Kusens. Neil is the CEO of Modloft Furniture, where they make elite modern furniture for the contemporary home. Neil is also a member of the infamous now Wednesday night poker group that I'm part of, and it was super awesome to get him on here and hear his story. Hey, real quick, you may have noticed I took a few weeks off there, so some personal news. My wife is going to give birth literally any moment. I'm recording this on Tuesday, May 25th. Her doctor said, let's hope you make it till Memorial Day. He's betting against that. Our son will be quite early as well. And so obviously there's been some stress around there. I've been trying to take some time off and get some other businesses in better shape so that I can step away when my son is born. So with that, I'm going to put this podcast out today, tonight on Tuesday, May 25th. And I will probably take a week off in between a few episodes. I have a few more recorded with my friend Tony Yu from Vessi Footwear. I also recorded one yesterday with Ezra Firestone. And so I will put them out probably every other week, which will give me some time to lock some guests in, record some episodes, get these published. So I'm sure you can understand it's a very stressful time in my life, but also a very exciting time in my life. And so give me a break as I kind of go every other week here, and perhaps there'll be a little break in there too. Who knows what will happen? But if you've been enjoying the show, and if you're late to the show, there is some unbelievable episodes in the past that I would definitely recommend going and checking out while I kind of go every other week here. One of my favorites, if not my favorite, is still episode 1 with Kayvon, a very good friend of mine, and he has one hell of a story. And then just looking at most popular episodes that I can see here inside Simplecast. Check out episode 4, 20 Years in E-Commerce with TJ Ferrara, 22 with Isaac Smith, episode 2 and his returning episode with Brian Angel, episode 6 and 36 with John Warren are popular. Episode 7 from Baseball to Business, Taylor Holliday's first episode is incredible, so is his second one. There's quite a few on here that I would definitely recommend checking out, so feel free, if you haven't gone back, if you're a late joiner of this podcast, go back and check out some of the early ones. I think they're fantastic, and it's early. I don't think they quite got the love they should have got way back in the day. So definitely check those out. But anyway, thanks so much for your patience. I want to keep doing the show. I want to keep putting out episodes, but certainly a stressful time in my life, and also very exciting whenever my son decides to come join this world. So thanks for your patience, and I look forward to keep putting out more episodes in the future. But let's jump into today's episode with Neil Kusens. Neil Kusens, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
You are one of the last people from our Wednesday night poker group that I wanted to get on here. And turns out, I think you're the biggest whale of them all. We talked a little bit beforehand how big your business is. We don't have to get too deep into it, but wow, what a big business, really cool business. And in industry, people tell you to kind of stay out of, right? So Neil's the owner of Modloft. I probably said it in the intro, but furniture, man, who knew?
Yeah, furniture is I still tell people to stay away. It is a miserable business. It is it's great. It's a lot of fun. The home sector is a great place to be, but furniture in general is still a very difficult thing to deliver into people's homes today. I
think you separated yourself in the right way, right? So I know a few people that sell this, maybe not as high end as some of the stuff you're selling, and it needs to be assembled when it gets there, and that turns into a headache, right? Shipping is a nightmare, and furniture. I've never heard good things, so I'm curious to hear all the good things from you and how well you guys are doing, and how you go about your business. Because, like I said, I've been told to stay away.
Yeah, I think probably more value to your listeners is telling you all the bad things, because we've been through hell and back several times, and I know startup guys in the e-com space typically hear all these wonderful stories about how this company is an overnight success and that company is an overnight success, but really this is a decade in the making, and I got plenty of battle scars.
I definitely want to hear some of those. I think that's the best part of this show is I try to be curious and ask questions and not just make it sound, like everybody's figured it all out and we're all just running, because that was one of the biggest things I struggled with early on, was thinking I wasn't smart enough, that the people above me had something figured out that I didn't have figured out, and they don't, right? We're all just winging it. I would assume even 10 years in and doing as well as you are every day, you're like, oh shit, I got to deal with this, or what am I going to do next?
Yeah, it's a absolutely. There's a learning curve that never ends, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, like, if who wants to be bored and doing the same thing over and over, whether you're working in a warehouse or you're running an e-com business, whatever it is, it's nobody wants to be bored. It's definitely not boring.
Well, I know where you are now, a little bit at least, and I hope we get there too. But like, I need to know how you became, where you are now, right? Like, you've been running Modloft for what you said, almost a decade now. You guys are doing quite well, but I would imagine that wasn't your first foray into business. I'd love to hear where it all started for Neil.
I was one of those guys who, one of those kids, I should say, that you know started working from like an early age, or was interested in earning an income from an early age, and not exactly sure where that came from. My dad was entrepreneurial, but not till later in his career, not in my formative child years. Yeah, I don't know. I started. I grew up in the '80s. Um, I was uh, I was heavily into gaming. Um, Not the gaming that is exists today per se, but the good old fashioned PC gaming days. Um, and I think my very first memory is playing Microsoft Flight Simulator, and which I think they just did a remake, or they're doing a remake now. But in any case, yeah, I started from a gaming perspective, and then got really fascinated with this thing called a bulletin board system, which I know you and I talked about a little bit. I'm not sure you understood what I was saying.
No,
Uh,
literally have a note on my screen that says, "What the fuck is this?" Like, I know you're not much older than me, right? I was born in the '80s, so I'm a little behind you, but I didn't know. I don't even know what Microsoft Flight Simulator is, right? Like, what was computer gaming back then, right? It was I'm thinking of systems. So there was Atari, and then it moved it. Nintendo was right as I was, starting to come of age to play video games, and so that was 8-bit. What existed on computers back then, even?
so desktop wise, you had Commodore 64. Well, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it. I guess you call Commodore 64 a desktop back in the day. You had Commodore 64, which turned into the Amiga. You had Macs out there, the 2E, that had games on them, and then PCs. And I was a PC guy from day one. I am no longer a PC guy, but I was a PC guy from day one, and I spent a considerable amount of time, discovering gaming. Gaming back then was, to answer your question, was initially text based. There's a game called Zork, for example. Um, uh, there's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's a whole bunch of them that existed, and basically, if you wanted to, they're basically variants of Dungeons and Dragons, in that you sometimes rolled virtual dice. If you wanted to proceed forward, you type to move forward. If you wanted to turn left, you type turn left. I mean, it was pretty elementary, if you will. But in some respects, it escalated my education quite a bit, because here you are, 7 years old, 8 years old, and you're just like in Dungeons and Dragons, when you're reading a book or something in PCs, in these games, you were literally typing what you wanted to do, and so you had to get pretty proficient in your vocabulary. It was interesting times, and then they started turning in graphical a little bit, and that was like a Microsoft Flight Simulator, which was basically like you fly an actual jet across the globe, landing it, taking it off, all the instrument panels. I think they actually built it to. The rumor was they built it to actually build real flight simulators for training pilots. But in any case, yeah, the games were all over the place, but they grew kind of quickly. They you know there was a company called Sierra Online that came out. That started making games like Leisure Suit Larry and King's Quest, and those kinds of games, and those were more of graphical nature. still kind of RPG-ish. And yeah, it was. I could go on and on about gaming, but I won't.
Well, I just Googled Microsoft Flight Simulator, and yeah, this is retro, man. This is crazy. And you're right. There was something that came out in 2020, like a new version of it. Um,
There you go.
82.
So we
How far along the path is like? Maybe I'm going to date myself here, but like Oregon Trail, right? I was pretty young in school when we were playing on green screen computers and playing Oregon Trail.
Yeah, I think that's like late 80s, if I remember correctly. Maybe early 90s, but late 80s. But yeah, it was. I think that was along the same lines. Yeah, and I was playing on green screens too, by the way, green CRTs. I remember my first color monitor. That was pretty cool. But yeah, so I mean, to circle back to what you said, I'm not that much older than you. I'm in my mid 40s, but I started really, really young. And we're talking like 5 years old when I was playing on when I got my first 8086 PC. And that was a direct result of my dad, who was a systems engineer at one of the largest hospital systems in Miami, in South Florida. And I used to, hang out in big mainframe rooms and hide behind mainframes and play hide and seek. And, it was good times. So I got exposed to computing very, very early.
Well, how does that turn into like starting your own bulletin board system? First of all, what is a bulletin board system?
I'm going to have your readers do some Googling when they're listening. But
I'm going to do it right now.
A bulletin board system. It's not that dissimilar to today's version of a website, if you will. It was the precursor to the World Wide Web, where through dial-up modems you had a phone number and you could connect to a system that was really intended to be a community. There was forums, there was lots of communication back and forth, but it was being dial-up in the very early days. There was one user at a time allowed on there, right? So you go in your Hayes or US Robotics modem and put in 305.555.1212 and whatever your bulletin board was, and you that you wanted to go visit, and you would get a busy signal if somebody else was on it. It's pretty insane when you think about that today. Eventually they started creating like you could have like a bank of phone numbers and stuff like that, but it was still one user per number. And
why was it phone numbers and not like, I'm thinking IP addresses, right? I can't even picture why you would go to a phone number.
It didn't exist. Yeah, it was everything was tethered to that copper. And then ISDN came out after dial-up, and that made things a little easier. But yeah, it was tethered to a phone number, and so one person at a time. So you would literally just robo-dial the bulletin board you wanted to call, and once you got on, you could stay on as long as you want and tie it up. So if you were uploading or downloading any files or whatever, you might be on there for an hour or two. And so bulletin boards were, I don't know, I think they were, again, not dissimilar from the World Wide Web today. I mean, it was a place to build a community. It was a place to meet some friends. It was a place to share wares, as they would call them, right? So you would trade files, and sort of the files of choice back in the day were people sharing video games that were probably not supposed to be shared. Not probably, they definitely were not supposed to be shared. They were copy protected by manufacturers, and there was a whole community of people cracking, quote unquote, cracking video games code and distributing the game the game online, and that was I guess you could call that sort of to relate it to more of your audience, relatable to like Napster, if you will, but again in sort of the early days.
Help me understand. So I'm always curious on how information spread back then, right? I think we had our mutual friend Jeff Vogel on before. He was talking about his dad's VW Beetle business, and you know, it's pre-internet, right? And they're showing up at meets and putting ads in magazines. How did you even know what number to dial to get onto someone's bulletin board, you know, hopefully, and not get a busy signal, and then, you know, download some things from, how did you guys even interact on like learning about other people's bulletin boards?
Yeah, it's that's a really great question. I don't remember because I was so young and because it was so long ago. I don't recall my first sort of bulletin board, but um, there were services that eventually became, say, America Online, AOL. There was one called CompuServe that existed around the same time, and that was sort of a larger enterprise version of bulletin boards, if you will, and people were sneaking off and having, sharing bulletin board numbers on there, in that community. If you ever, back then, like somebody would say, your friend would come over with his floppy disk and say, "Hey, I got this new game," and that I somebody gave to me or whatever, and there'd be like a pre-roll before every game that was cracked. That who cracked it and where you could go get more of them like that. And so you one by one like started finding a game here or there, and or being given a game, and it has a phone number for some website, some bulletin board, and yeah, just one by one you started building a sort of a directory, if you will, and then people started publishing directories and so on and so forth.
Are you at home like writing all of these in a notebook then?
Kind of, yeah. Literal phone numbers, like actual phone numbers, like you would in a Rolodex, if you will.
That's insane. So like, you know, in the modern world of the internet and modern marketing, whether you like it or not, porn leads the way on everything, right? They're the first to discover how to use everything. Was that the case in bulletin board systems too?
Not really, because not actual visual porn, because images were not terribly, you're still largely analog on photos, and the concept of scanning a photo and sharing that photo it wasn't so easy. So no, I mean, I'm sure maybe there was. I don't want to be too naive. I was, again, in my single digit years when I started this, so it's possible they existed and I didn't know. But certainly later on, as you said, porn tends to be an early adopter to technology, and they definitely jumped on quickly once the speed of transfer sped up. So when we're talking back in the early days, I had a 300 baud modem. For anybody who knows what that means, and it turned from 300 to 600 to 1200 to 2400 to so on, doubling, so on and so forth. And really not till you got to like 56,000 K were you even fast enough to even consider really trading at files at any sort of speed.
Yeah, I wonder if it would even be files or more, written word back then, right? Like a 50 Shades of Gray sort of thing.
I'm sure that existed. Absolutely. Definitely on CompuServe. I don't know. Again, I'm sure there were bulletin boards with all kinds of shady stuff going out there, but yeah, I trafficked it in the gaming world.
It's taboo to talk about for sure, but my friend Jake from Minneapolis meetup said it to me a few years ago, and I can't shake the idea that porn was kind of the first at everything. They were the first to do pop-ups. They were the first to do chat in the lower window. They were first to do a lot of stuff in marketing. Obviously, first to do. They're the biggest portion of the internet that no one talks about, and so I assume there was something back there. Look on your 300. I don't even know what you said. Gig mode. 300 what? It's definitely not gig, right? What's a baud?
BAUD. I'm not sure what that stands for, actually. We should go look it up together right now.
Well, how long does a 300 baud, like, first off, you got to hear, you got to dial into the what is the internet, right? And like, how long does it take you to load one of these like text only, but just Google bulletin board system 80s if you want to look at what I'm looking at. But like, how long does it take for you to go from, turning your computer on to get one of these to load back then?
Well, I mean, you had to turn on both your computer, then your external modem back in the day. Eventually, modems became internal cards, but initially they were external only, and as far as I know. And yeah, it'd be good 5-10 minutes between boot up to being able to start dialing out. A 300 baud modem, just for perspective, transfers 300 bauds per second, or 300 k per second. It's not a lot. So it is a very slow process. But I do see there's plenty of people out there on the web that are showing that you can go listen to the sound. It is that great, wonderful sound.
This is like a trip down memory lane for me, as far as like looking at these photos and some of the computers they're showing. Like, look, I didn't have my own computer until I was on my own. Like, at 19, I think I bought a used one at a garage sale, and that was my first one. But I remember in school having, floppy disk and playing Oregon Trail, and then we eventually got those bubble looking Macs when I was in high school. Like, those came in, and I took a coding class in high school where I learned basic HTML. Like level 1 and level 2, we built our own website. I built my band a website, black background and flames and whatever else a cheesy high schooler would make for a metal band. But like,
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous that at a young age you were surrounded by this technology, and I'm sure it served you well, right? And it's between like watching that and then like seeing Moore's law in effect, like how far we've come and how fast we've come is crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the strange thing. That's the exciting part, actually. I've gotten to see it really from. If I was born maybe 5 years earlier, I really would have seen from day one. But it was pretty close to day one. And when we're talking about social community and the world expanding beyond your four walls, and so Uh, I was meeting people around the world, really, but certainly in the U.S. At again, a very young age, and just knowing the world was bigger than my four walls, like I said. And I eventually created my own quote unquote hacking group, and we started cracking video games ourselves. Again, I think the statute of limitations on this has ended, so I'm okay to talk about this now. But yeah, I mean, we would go out there and compete to see who was going to distribute video games the earliest. So the next great video game that came out, who would be the one that would come out with it first and release it to the world. It was a big competition, and really got me into my competitive spirit, and it really became something where you are 24/7 constantly trying to be the best in releasing video games. It was kind of crazy.
Was there any financial gain to cracking the game and releasing it on your bulletin board, or was it all strictly like ego? I'm the one who cracked it, I got to put my name on the front of it.
No, there was no financial gain. If anything, my parents, whether they knew it or not, were supporting me at a healthy clip to do this. Back then, you had to, almost all the bulletin board systems were long distance, and you were paying long distance rates. And they were not cheap. So a user was, there were those out there that would, traffic in the borrowing of people's long distance cards. You could have like an AT&T or whatever long distance card associated to you, and when you wanted to dial out, you could use those cards in order to have like some bulk long distance savings rate. And there like the dark web today, there were plenty of people trading those card numbers so that you can dial out on someone else's dime, literally. Kind of shitty to say that now.
You're bringing back memories I don't even remember having. Like I until I had actively just thought about it now. I don't remember my parents saying, hey, we would only call my grandparents occasionally, or we would only call some cousins occasionally because we didn't have the money to pay the long distance bill. And I forgot that those times even existed. It's insane to me. And then to think, I didn't even know that the internet, if you will, was calling phone number. I had no idea.
Yeah, it wasn't until way later on that obviously after the America onlines of the world where you could just literally just type in an IP address into a browser bar and end up somewhere else in the world. But back to your other point, it's what's unique is I don't think about it often enough, but I should. Just really the evolution of humankind, really, during this tech boom, where again we were tethered to corded phones and copper and local phone numbers, and I think I was just in a hotel recently, and they were still charging long distance if you dial out. I mean, I remember those days, right? And so, I think just really seeing how community formed globally has been really fun to watch, really interesting to watch. And by the way, they sometimes I'm accused of being a little too cranky when somebody's coming out with a new technology, and I'm like, oh, I've seen this 5 other times already. Like, it's just been called this before or that before or whatever, right? Everything is just 9 out of 10 times, everything is just an improvement over something that's already happened, or rebranding, or repackaging, or so on and so forth. And that when you've been around in this space for as long as I have, you've seen it all, and not everything is terribly original these days.
But I don't know, doing a deep dive back to where you began, and even just remembering my childhood, it makes me so excited for where we're going. Like the where we've come since you and I were kids to now is bananas, right? And I can't imagine a better time in history to be alive, let alone to be our kids and be their age, starting out with what's just about to shift now. Man, things are going to be crazy.
It's scary. I tell this to my wife all the time. My wife would prefer that nothing changes further. But the reality is, I mean, everything is moving so quickly. And, I have a 7-year-old, and the odds that he drives a car in 10 years, I don't know. I think it's pretty low. I mean, I know driving cars already is historically low for teenagers now, for 16 to 21. Nobody's in a rush to get it. I remember counting down the days so I could get my learner's permit at 15. Now, where do they want to go? Where do they go? They don't go anywhere. They stay and they FaceTime and they play Roblox and Minecraft and whatever. They have nowhere to go. There's no mall they go to anymore. They're really and congregate at. There's movies are at your fingertips. So very rarely do kids today already rush to get, as I understand it, rush to go get a driver's license. So imagine 10 years from now when we have fully autonomous vehicles, what's going to happen? It's crazy to think about that. My kid is not going to, it may never drive a car.
But look, I like to think of it as we've freed up so much time, right? And that time's going to get filled with even greater things that'll free up even more time. And so, fast food maybe isn't the best choice of analogy here, but they sped up eating in grocery stores, and we don't have to farm anymore. We don't have to do a lot of things we didn't do. And so that's just the next step in this evolution, that we don't need to drive cars, and it's going to get rid of a lot of jobs probably as well. Not needing to have truck drivers or anything like that, but it's only going to lead to more innovation and more interesting and cool things.
Yeah, there were some really cool threads on Twitter a few weeks ago when Amazon came out with their most recent annual letter. I think it was Jeff Bezos' last letter. that he authored, and the argument basically is that your your time has been by having Prime, all those trips you used to take to go to the grocery store or take to go to pick up toilet paper or runs to Target or whatever, all that time, if you put it in terms of units of money, that $129 Amazon Prime annual membership saves you about, depending on what your income level is, it could save you anywhere from $1,000 a year to $20,000 a year, just from the convenience of being able to say, oh, I need to buy more. Like today, I'm running out of disposable masks. I need to buy more masks. 10 seconds before this call, hit buy and it's done. I don't have to run anywhere. I don't have to get in the car. I don't have to do anything. That time savings is amazing.
The weird part is the hate for all of that, right? How many people in this country hate Jeff Bezos because of what? Like, he created something amazing that allowed more space, more freedom, saved you tons of money. Like, it's a fantastic thing that he's done with Amazon, an incredible feat, and people hate him. Oh, he has too much money, or like he's evil of some. I don't understand the other side of people. Is it just that they're scared of change?
Well, there's certainly an element of people being scared of change, right? But I think it's there's we'd be remiss to not discuss, or look at it in terms of what it's done to small businesses in America that, we're running brick and mortar retail stores. And, Amazon comes in and destroys every independent bookseller known to man, or almost all of them.
Hold on. I'm going to interrupt then. Because then, like, are you going to make that same point when autonomous driving gets rid of all truck drivers? Like, do we have to feel bad that technology has evolved and we've evolved as a species? Or like, I think, look, it sucks for those people. Amazon came along and innovated and they did not, right? And so they need to continue to learn skills. And I think Amazon provided an opportunity, albeit a questionable one at some points when you sell on Amazon, but like, they've provided an opportunity for small business as well.
Well, sure. So, I mean, that's the benefit of hindsight today, right? But as it was happening, there wasn't an Amazon marketplace for small businesses to go onto. There wasn't Shopify stores. So you displaced a whole segment of the population of the small business community, and it took some time for them to get back, right? And now, now on the other side of it, or as we're on the other side of it, of course, I think anybody who worked in retail, 7 days a week in their family TV shop, is thrilled to be able to just throw something online, put it in a marketplace and make a few shekels and stay home. I mean, like, it's anybody who has been in brick and mortar retail and has moved to e-com, of course, sees the benefit of it. Now, there's a downside, arguably, from a community perspective. I am one of those guys that still likes to go in and look at vinyls in a record store, because I like to touch and feel product. I think Dave talked about this a little in his episode. There's this weird dichotomy. I sell things. I make product today, and my entire career has been in e-commerce, really. But I personally still enjoy touching and feeling things. Just like today, after this call, I'm going to get my son a new baseball bat for Little League, and he's outgrown his current one. And I could go on Amazon and buy it right now, but I want to go and go to Big Five and touch it and feel it and have him take a few practice swings safely, and see how it goes. And I think that experience is not, certainly not replicable on Amazon yet or on e-com.
I think there's room for both, right? There was some fallout there, of course, when Amazon came along, but that drove the innovation for Shopify. That it ended up like spurring this creator economy where now I think there's more opportunity than there was for you to open up a shop, on Main Street and make a few bucks. I think there's even more opportunity, and it's opened up a whole new digital era that you don't necessarily even need to sell things, right? To sell things like actual things. You can sell knowledge, you can sell yourself, you can sell entertainment, you can sell influence. You can sell yourself if you're into that. There's a lot of things that you can sell nowadays, right? So I think it drove innovation. And so while there was some displacement, it forced growth.
It did. I mean, the way they went about doing it is, again, was harmful in some respects because they did it by selling at next to no margin, right? So that mom and pop retail store, and you're selling at MSRP or what thereabouts, and here comes Amazon selling at 10 points above. And I didn't really get it back in the day. I do now, obviously, but I didn't really get back in the day how could they afford to do this? Like I thought Amazon's going to go out of business. Like how can they can't sustain these margins, right? And I was a little naive in that respect, and I didn't really understand that Wall Street had a bigger vision of funding losses year after year. And Bezos is famous for sticking to his game plan despite Wall Street not liking him. And they, those to this day, Amazon, if you open up their financials, makes very little money. All their money comes from AWS. All their profits come from AWS, which is their cloud platform. So they built this entire retail world to deliver us, toilet paper same day or next day. But at the end of the day, all their profits come from cloud-based server solutions.
And it's got to be data soon enough, right? Like there's 5 units in this house of a name I can't say out loud, or you'll hear all of them go off right now. And I'm sure they're collecting all of that data as they go along. And there's got to be a play there as well in the future as far as harvesting that data.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the other reason, Amazon has not always been well loved, is they have they're notorious, not unlike other retailers, frankly, but they were out and loud about it, taking categories that they saw selling really well and going out and sourcing their own private label version of something and calling it Amazon Basics. And all of a sudden, if you were selling Monster audio cables, who the hell wants to spend $90 on Monster audio cables when you can buy the Amazon Basics version for $20 and it's basically the same thing?
Yeah, they stripped brand from their platform. This is, kind of what I was alluding to earlier of what is the value they bring? You're going to make sales being on there. I think you can start a business really quickly on there. But I don't know if you could ever build a name off of Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's a good segue to later in the conversation here, but brand, the definition of brand has changed quite a bit, right? Like if you're selling a commodity, does brand even matter anymore? I mean, it does to some. I'm still one of those guys who still likes brand. There's only a certain amount of. I like Charmin toilet paper. I don't like single ply, off-brand toilet paper. But
we gotta get you to wipes, my man. I'm telling you, the future has arrived.
But but on the other hand, do I care about some name brand canned soup? No, I'll buy the Trader Joe's version happily. In fact, the Trader Joe's version is better. So I think the world has changed quite a bit on the branding side, and commodities are in a tough spot, an incredibly tough spot. Which is why I think you're seeing a lot of CPG companies go out there and acquire these sort of D2C brands like Dollar Shave Club and that kind of stuff to try to hold on to some sort of branding.
It's interesting to see. I don't know. Yeah, that kind of ties back to furniture. Furniture is commodity as well, right? And so, how not to jump too far ahead, and we'll get back to the conversation. I know we meandered all over the place there, but don't you run into the same thing with Modloft? Like, how are you setting yourself apart as a brand so that people want to buy from Modloft versus buying anywhere else you can buy furniture?
Yeah, that's the toughie, right? So we ask ourselves every time we have a new design, we ask ourselves, is this something that you can find in 5,000 other places, or somebody else can knock off easily or whatever? And if it doesn't pass that test, it goes in the trash, that design. We what the type of product we make is very, very difficult to make. We specialize in, I mean, for those of your audience who don't know, we make modern contemporary furniture. Um, uh, it's sort of European modern inspired, but sort of accessible to Americans at American price points and at American sort of comfort. Um, and so, but what we do is very difficult. We source materials from all over the world and combine them. So we'll take a stainless steel frame with on a sofa with a fabric made in North Carolina, with foam poured here and this poured there, and you put it all together, and it's not an easy thing for somebody to replicate. You can see cheaper knockoff versions of it on an Alibaba or something like that, where they're pitching that to importers, but really it's incredibly difficult to build a good piece of furniture, and certainly at the price points and at the quality that we build it at, and that sort of is one of our moats. But if we were selling, I mean, I got a call today, a random call today from a company that decided to make desks, just like kids' desks for the during the pandemic, and they got stuck with like 5,000 extra desks. All of a sudden, kids don't need desks. For A, we're going into the summer. B, kids are going to starting to go back to school, and so they got stuck with all these extra desks, and they, what are they going to do with them? Like they're trying to sell them on eBay and Amazon and whatever. Their cost of goods on that desk is about $50. We don't have anything in that price range, anywhere near that price range, because if you can make it that cheap, chances are 10,000 people will make it, and so you're stuck, by definition. You're stuck with a commodity, and it's a really terrible place to be.
Well, I have a million questions about Modloft, and the list gets longer every time I talk to you, because I don't think any of us really in that poker group knew a ton about you, right? And most of our conversations skew away from e-commerce, I would say, and more into just life and some deep conversations. So I have a lot of questions, but I want to know how we got there, right? So transition us from you're cracking video games and distributing them online, like transition there into how you even started into e-commerce.
Yeah, so I mean, those bulletin board days were sort of formative for me, in that they helped me understand organization. I was the quote unquote president of our cracking group at 10 years old, and I was directing 20-something-year-old fellow geeks like me, and coordinating them across, remotely, just like we do today, across the world. And
at 10 years old,
swear to God, I even met. My dad took me on a trip to meet some of my sort of like partners, if you will. Like when we were 12 years old, I flew to Dallas, and I flew to a couple places to just meet some of these guys who I'd never seen in person before. I've spent hours on the phone talking to them, or typing with them or whatever, but never met them in person. So it was my formative years of, or my early years of sort of how to run an organization, believe it or not.
That's wild, though. Like, how did your dad be like, yeah, you know what? You met some guy on, were they even calling it the internet back then? I have no idea. And he was like, yeah, let's fly to meet him.
Yeah, I think it was my dad was is a serious computer geek, and tech geek. And so, me doing that was sort of like, I'm a big sports fan, I think, and, coaching my son's little league team is like one of my joys of life. Like I can only imagine what what I was doing was the same thing for him. He was not into sports, could care less about sports, which is even more amazing that I came out a huge sports fan. So for him, I think this was like, oh, there's a chip off the old block. thing. And he, he encouraged it. He footed the bill for it. I got very expensive computers that I probably had no business getting at the time. And we weren't exactly, swimming in money at that time in my life. And yet he supported it. Well, my parents, both my mom and dad, obviously supported me. And yeah, it turned into, a hobby. Of course, during junior high and high school, I built computers for a living on the side, and I would build PCs mostly, and that was fun, and paid some bills. But yeah, that time period transitioned into, I believe, as I was telling you, I was the only regret I have in life really is that I got so burned out from being in front of a screen, and I craved wanting like real world. And it's not that I played sports and I went to school and I had friends and all that. It wasn't like shuttered in my room, but I didn't go to, when all my friends were going to sleepaway camp, I was spending the summer in front of my computer. And I think I sort of got burned out by the end of high school. I got a girlfriend, and who, believe it or not, is now my wife, and high school sweethearts. And we, and I went off to college, and fell in love with college sports. Obviously, I went to University of Michigan initially, and I was there during the Fab Five, and
Wow.
and
I
so
bet that was awesome.
Tom Brady. I mean, it was amazing for a sports fan. Actually, I was my freshman year. Chris Webber had just left to the draft, so I was there for the other four. But in any case, like, it was, I decided to walk away from my computer for like 3-4 years, and I didn't completely disconnect. Obviously, I was studying computer science for a little bit in school, and so on and so forth. I didn't completely disappear, but really those 4 years, as history proved, was the years that the early days of World Wide Web and Netscape and all that stuff. And I sort of took a step back during that time period. And had I not, I might have, I might have been very wealthy at an earlier age. But
Was that like
as it was
right around 2000? Do you think maybe you
earlier.
wouldn't have been wealthy? And you would have picked the wrong horses. There was a lot of, it's kind of like the NFT thing right now, right? Like it's pretty wild. A lot of people are going to lose. Do you think you would have picked the right horses through that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think knowledge is power, and so, like, the knowledge. I don't know that I would have been wealthy at that minute, kind of thing, but I think the knowledge that people were accumulating then. I came in with this sort of like built-in head start because I had started so young, and I was coding at a young age. I coded in Pascal and C and assembly and basic, and so these bulletin boards, by the way, that you put up were just pieces of software, and you can buy them off the shelf or get them off the shelf and sort of hack the shit out of it. Not on like a website today, right? So I was coding, and I sort of just fell back. HTML sort of came out, and I'm like, this is so lame. HTML, Visual Basic and HTML, and I'm like, what is all this? This is all this WYSIWYG stuff. Is like, this is not real coding. I'm sitting there in assembly doing zeros and ones, and literally, and hexadata and all that stuff, and you come out with this stuff, and it just seemed lame to me. And I just didn't really, I was young and I didn't understand what was happening in front of me and the opportunity there. And so in any case, I took a little break, and, literally those 4 years of college were really the time the World Wide Web started, getting big.
well, being 18 and having a girlfriend may do that to you as far as getting a little distracted. But is it weird to look back and think you like it? I don't know. I always think of that like getting old, right? Like I have a lot of friends who are like, back in my day, we did that. You know, the new stuff is, not cool or whatever. I don't want my kids playing on their tablets. You were kind of doing that with the new like coding methods, right? New technology at a young age. You were like, this is kind of lame. Back in my day, I used to do zeros and ones.
Yeah, it was a very early. So the flip side is it was a very early lesson in not to be that guy, right? So I learned, I was that guy or that kid. Uh, and yeah, now, to bring it to today's level, when I try to explain NFTs to somebody, and they're like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, who's going to buy a painting for 20 million, a JPEG of a painting for $20 million or whatever, or just blockchain? Like, blockchain is all, Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I'm, by the way, not anywhere near the expert Taylor is or Dave is, but I am, I'm learning, or you for that matter. But I understand that, the basic tenets of it, and I certainly understand the economic tenets of it. And the reality is, like, I was almost everyone in my peer group today says, what is this other than some speculative, like, gambling? And I get it. I understand that concept. But then you try to explain to somebody, like, what is a gold bar? Like, literally, like a physical gold bar. What store of value is that? Like, what, especially when the fiat is no longer tied to it. Like, why is there value to that? Why will you put your IRA in gold, but you won't put it into Bitcoin, or something along those lines? And so I think I learned that lesson early on, and that's helping me today. Later on in life, it helped me sort of not have this like back in my day thing, right? I still do that today. I stay very relevant today in all technology. I'm the guy who's playing, I'll be in my office and my son just got home from school and he gets his 30 minutes of screen time and he's jumping on Roblox, and I'll be in my office and jump on Roblox with him and play with him, and he'll be freaking out that dad's in the middle of his workday is just in a totally different location, is jumping on and playing, a fall blocks with him or banana eats or whatever. I don't know. I stay relevant with technology today for sure.
It's cool to learn that moment early. I think I had the same thing. My ex-wife's father was very much up on technology and running his iPhone, and then I bought my dad one, and like that after 10 years of bugging him to get an iPhone, right? He wanted the flip phone, and he told me he's 60, basically thinks life is over and there's no reason for him to learn anything new. And I was just like, holy shit, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I want to be able to keep up with everything. And Moore's law says we're only going to go faster and faster and faster. So I don't really want to get left behind.
Yeah. I think I'm still like everybody else. I've struggled to find that happy medium, right? Because I don't want to, I was just talking the other day. I don't own an Apple Watch or any sort of smartwatch, and I'm considered the resident geek around here. Why don't I own a watch? And I'm like, today I'm that guy that's trying to practice some sort of healthy balance. Like, I leave my phone in my kitchen when I go to sleep now. I don't have it at my bedside. I don't put it in my nightstand, because even in the nightstand you hear the little buzz going off and it disrupts your REM sleep. And I'm trying to find that healthy balance between technology and like disconnecting. And I don't think anyone's really figured it out yet. Everyone's trying different things and so on and so forth. I think that it's so yeah, I don't know. When I look at new technology, I want to embrace it. And I also don't want to go feet in and really get immersed to the degree that nothing else exists in the world.
Yeah, I mean, notifications is a different animal. I've had my notifications turned off for a couple of years now. I went to an event where they made us like put our phones in a bin the whole time we were there, and I just felt the stress melt off of me of like not, no, I do wear an Apple Watch, and at the time it was just my wrist would vibrate every, I don't know, 46 seconds, right? I don't know about you, but I get about 300 emails a day between the 9 different G Suite accounts I have for my multiple businesses and my personal email. And so, yeah, that was a big thing for me too. So I totally get it. And we tried to practice Amish Hour here. Somebody taught me Amish Hour, where like the 1 hour before bed to turn off all screens and not look at your phone. And we tried that for a little while. It worked for a little while, and it was good. I would say, yeah, my own dopamine needed more screen before I needed to scroll through Twitter one more time before bed.
Yeah, we need the TV at night, but you know I was going to say something and I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, I was going to say, you know, like, have you been to a concert where they make you put your phone in the bin and lock it up, and you can't access your phone during a concert or during a comedy show or whatever like that? When I first experienced that, I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, this is not cool. Like, what if we have an emergency and the babysitter needs to find us or whatever? And then, of course, you think back in your day when your parents were going out to concerts and they didn't, you know, if there was an emergency at home, the babysitter figured it out. Like, you gave them the emergency contact list of somebody who would be available. Like, this need to always be available just is insane. And you know, so I now enjoy that concept when I go to a show and they make you lock up your phone, and they're doing it because they don't want you to take photography or video. But at the end of the day, like, it's, you know what, to actually just be present and watch the show instead of holding up your phone and recording the show and watching the show through the eyes of your phone camera versus just your own two eyes. It's life-changing. It's different. And so again, there's balance. Everything in life is about balance, right? And I think we're all striving to find what that balance is.
Well, let's balance this show and get back to the original story. How did you come out? So, like, you found the love of your life. You went to college and you disappeared from computer life, but you got back and like take me into e-commerce, man. What was your step from college into e-commerce?
Yeah, so I think right out of college, I went to law school, and you know, I thought I knew I wasn't going to be a lawyer, but I also knew that I wanted to sort of, you know, run my own organization one day or whatever, and my parents advised me to go get a law school degree. It can never hurt you. You can use it in life later. And I did about a little over 3 semesters, almost 4 semesters. And so I'm over the halfway point of getting my law degree and decided, but at the same time, I was beginning to trade stocks at the time. And trading stocks back then, you know, again, I'm going to sound like this 80-year-old man to your audience, but like back then you had a beeper with like your stock ticker on your beeper, and you had and I had this like radio with a huge antenna, a radio wave stock ticker that I'd put on my desk while I was in crim law and watching stocks trade on it. You couldn't actually execute trades on it, but you could. It was a sort of a real time stock ticker, and so I was doing. I was trading stocks. It was in the very early days of the tech boom, and we're talking late '90s. And you know, I got in knee deep in you know, what was a precursor to Twitter and Reddit and all that, with like a ragingbull.com or something like that, where you would, again, be in a community of people who are pumping certain equities and whatever. And I fell in love with that for a little bit. And I specialize in the tech space, which, you know, back then was sort of as speculative as crypto is today. You know, you're going to invest in Facebook, or no, Facebook didn't exist then, but I don't know, something along those lines. And I actually fell in love with the telecom space. and I worked with I spent a lot of time with small cap, micro cap stocks. Some people would call them penny stocks, but not penny stocks in the name of like, speculative garbage, but actual stocks that just reverse merged into the stock market. Remember, I told you before, everything new is old. So like today's SPAC boom is basically the same thing as penny stocks back in the day. There were some legit companies using it as a vehicle to reverse merge into the market, and there was others that were using it to fraudulently, let's just say, pure gambling. And so I got really involved in a company that that specialized in bringing fiber to the home. I don't want to spend too much time here because we'll be here forever. But the concept was that again, we were still largely in broadband at that time. DSL modems, I think, were the most popular form of broadband at that moment. And fiber came out, and it was insanely fast. And you could transmit video on it, like you could watch what we now watch Netflix. You could do back then on fiber to the home, and it was a really cool space. And I got really involved. I flew down to meet with the companies that I had invested in, and attended shareholder meetings and so on and so forth, and got really excited about the space and invested on with others on behalf of it, on behalf of them, and did really well until the the stock market crashed and burned, the first sort of dot-com bust, and I didn't really understand it because I'm like, well, what does this have to do with like all the pets.com that went crash and boom? Like, what is what do these companies have to do with it? And I didn't really understand market dynamics and understanding how capital flowed, and how capital allocators, where they decided to put their money. And so, fiber to the home was literally digging concrete up and laying actual fiber pipes from a co-location down directly into a neighborhood, into a home. It was largely it was all wired, and so it was a huge capital investment, and all the companies in that space sort of lost access to capital during that first bust, and it was yet another lesson in my life that if I wanted to, it's also part of my personality. I'm a bit of a control freak. At least that's what my wife and therapist tell me. And so, it was one of those things where I decided that I'm going to go out and start my own thing. I'm not going to invest in other people's things. I want control of my own destiny. And so I started a business with a few childhood buddies of mine, and who are also tech geeks, and a friend that I met out here, and a couple friends I met out here, and we formed a group that today would seem kind of me too, if you will, or some, everyone's done it already, but back then it was pretty unique. We were starting niche websites that were focused in very specific verticals that had high margin, and we were selling product that wasn't sold anywhere else on the internet. At the time, back then there were not a lot of mass Amazon type spaces. Walmart wasn't online, Target wasn't online, whatever. And so we started in several spaces. The most popular of our websites that we launched was one in the consumer electronics space, or several in the consumer electronics space, but one in particular. And we were, I think I mentioned it, we were selling plasma TVs back then, before plasma TVs existed. Or before they existed in retail, I should say, or even, retail at all. They were actually commercial grade plasma TVs that celebrities and the White House and whomever was buying and putting in starting at 10 grand and up. And, for a bunch of 24-year-olds selling $10,000 TVs with 30-point margins on them or 40-point margins on them, we thought we were the shit, just printing money back then.
How did you get access to be able to sell them? And what's the URL? I got Wayback Machine pulled up. I want to see this.
TVauthority.com was one of them.
Nice.
Oh, God, I haven't even looked at the Wayback. I should look. Probably.
It was hopping in 2004, 2005, huh?
Did you find it?
Lots of screenshots back. I'm going to share my screen with you. This makes great radio, but I'm going to share it. Go to Wayback Machine and look up TVauthority.com if you want to see it.
Yeah, I'm going to go look myself. There you go. Oh, yeah, there it is.
That's not terrible. So how did you get access to sell plasma TVs back then?
So, plasma TVs.
Sorry,
it's a long
this
story.
Q&A. How far from the plasma TV should I be? The questions back then are hilarious. Sorry.
That's awesome. Man, this is just giving me some really insane flashbacks here.
That's funny.
How did we get access to them? So my current partner at Modloft was an original partner of this, and he lasted 5 minutes in there because he was running another company called Brandsmall, which was again sort of a conglomerate of just random stuff that you could drop ship from any distributor. So he had his one contribution was that he noticed that on his site that he had 10 billion SKUs on, that people were starting to buy plasma TVs that he had been buying from distributors and drop shipping. And so he turned us on to those distributors. We opened the accounts. Again, there wasn't a lot of issues with retail because these were commercial grade products. So you didn't have to have a storefront or all the other things that brands were requiring back then to sell online. And so we were selling commercially graded Sony and Panasonic and Fujitsu and Pioneer and those types of brands. And one by one, we started, finding better distributors and better drop shippers. And then eventually opened up, near the end, opened up direct accounts with the Sonys and Samsungs of the world.
I love that you started drop shipping. Often people laugh when I started there, but I still do today. I think it's a fantastic method of distribution and an easy way to get started. And so I love that you started there. I would love 40-point margins on a $10,000 item for me to drop ship right now. That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
How does that come to an end? Obviously prices didn't remain at $10,000 for long, but how does that come to an end?
Yeah, it was, I think I may have mentioned, it was an ugly end. It was we were prices were dropping. So eventually Best Buy started selling them at brick and mortar. Those screens we diversified into every part of the consumer electronics, whether it was audio, speakers, receivers, whatever. It wasn't. We didn't. So we were trying to be sort of. There's a company today that still exists today called Crutchfield.com that is sort of our model. But margins were shrinking. To your point, competition was going up. CPCs were going up, or back then it were mostly CPMs, but then CPCs were going up. We're talking like Overture days, if you know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Like the precursor to Google AdWords.
Is that the company they bought to make Google AdWords?
They did not, but who bought Overture? I think was it Yahoo or Alta Vista, or one of them bought Overture, or the tech behind it. But they were like one of the first CPC ad networks, and so we were doing that. Then of course Google came out, and So we were growing this thing. We were getting big. We opened stores. We did, we you name it. But very first mistake we made was I did this with a bunch of close friends, like I mentioned, and we did a really poor job of doing all the legal stuff. So we didn't have a really strong operating agreements. We didn't have really strong controls, voting shares, the whole 9 yards. We barely ran board meetings. We were just 20-something-year-olds without a playbook. That exists. The playbook obviously exists today. Anybody can go to LegalZoom and get any document you want today. But back then, it was not so much. And so we were just assume we were all good friends and we would figure it out. And one of my closest friends, got married, got kids. He was the first one to have kids at a sort of a young age in his mid-20s. And all of a sudden now and we could have a whole entire podcast about this because I love talking about it as warnings. But when you take on partners, you're taking on their spouses, you're taking on their children, you're taking on their worries, right? And to this day, I don't know exactly what happened that triggered his behavior, but he got to a place where he wanted out, and this was our CTO, and one of the big things about this business that, if you remember, I said we started by building a bunch of niche websites. This one happened to be the biggest one that took off, but we had others. I didn't really realize at the time, and I guess my partner did, was that our biggest asset value was the website. It was custom coded. We built it from scratch. It was incredibly SEO friendly. We had every trick in the book down at that time. And he started, I guess, on the side selling some of that software to other people, and developing websites for them. And I think he quickly found out that was more valuable than selling, consumer electronics, which was increasingly getting more competitive and getting lower margins and more competition. And so he wanted out, and named the price that we thought was insane, and a battle ensued. And long story short, he ended up torpedoing the entire company, and spent way too much in legal fees and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it was a very humbling experience. Though it was my first taste of true failure. We had to file bankruptcy. We had customer refunds we had to issue at the very end, that we had to dig out of our pockets for. It was a horrible experience. And most importantly, I lost like 3 really close friends during the process, and that alone was a horrible experience. So it took me a good 2 years to recover from that. That was a rough time.
I bet it, it affects you in business, right? I didn't have anything to that magnitude, but one of the first things I ever did, it didn't work. And I let it eat at me for a long time before I ever started again. This sounds like, orders of magnitude bigger, let alone you're married, you have to file for bankruptcy, you're losing friends. I would imagine. Really pushes you away from starting again.
Well, it certainly makes you gun shy. It wasn't my first thing I've ever done. Again, I've been entrepreneurial my entire life, so I wasn't scared of that. But obviously I was afraid of disappointing my wife or, investors or whomever. And so there was that, later in the world, today, for those youngins today, failing in your first couple startups is like a badge of honor. There's countless stories of every guy today or every person, I should say, today who's I think the norm, not the exception, is somebody who has been VC funded once or twice and took the company to zero and lost every dollar of that investment that they raised, or their Series A or their seed or whatever. But then, somebody believed in them and came back and gave them more and more on the next idea, and so on and so forth. And now today they took all those lessons and are succeeding. To a certain degree, that's what happened with me. I didn't know that it was going to. At the time, I certainly didn't know, and it was sort of shameful to have fallen. And you're talking about 20-something-year-olds that I invested 5-6 years of my life in that company, which at that time seems like a lot, right? It is a lot even today, but at that time seemed like a lot of your life. And so I was mourning a loss of my baby. I was more, that my baby being the company. I had, dreams of buying a mansion in Los Angeles, and now I'm, now I'm like on starting from scratch again, from zero, literally. And so it was a tough period for sure. But back then there were no real. It wasn't like I could just go on Twitter and tell everyone write some Taylor like thread on all the lessons I've learned about fucking as working with partners, or not having your legal documents buttoned up, or I could probably write 500 threads on this stuff today. Back then there was nowhere to turn. Like you just, Twitter just came out, I think, but there was nowhere to turn. Like there was nowhere to get help to find other people that had failed. And then, like I said, timing's a real funny thing. As that was crashing and burning in Santa Monica, where we were based, Santa Monica, California, we all of a sudden there was nobody in tech when we were there, and all of a sudden now it's Silicon Beach, and there's company, Snap gets formed in Venice, and there's all this VC money now in Los Angeles focusing on tech, and we had just crashed and burned. If this had happened, if we were able to hold on for like 2 more years, the irony is we probably would have sold for 9 figures, 8 figures, because we were grabbing market share. Profits weren't necessarily there anymore, or the level of profits with the margin shrinking, but we were grabbing market share. Our revenue was going up and up and up and up, and I'm sure there would have been a nice exit for somebody back then, but we couldn't hold on those extra 2 years.
Well, you said it was a wild tale about deception and friends. I know you didn't get too deep into it, but you can tell, or at least I can tell just talking to you, that there's a lot of pain there, right? That was a big moment in your life.
Oh yeah, I still choke up about it. Again, I think mostly from the betrayal and the friendships lost and all that stuff. I mean, I think we could spend hours talking about this, or I can in some sadistic way, but like it, literally having 40 something employees and laying them all off one by one, and we were on eBay in the last, like, we had closed shop and I was on eBay like selling off desks and stuff, like we were just trying to raise capital to close the business appropriately. And it was insane, just that. And I had, at my height, I had 3 business partners, different sizes of ownership, and like 2.5 of them just bailed. One of them was the one who torpedoed us, and some of the others bailed, and I'm literally left there. Like, when I say bail, they like fled the state, bailed. Like, they were like, I don't want anything to do with this. And I stood behind like some martyr to lay off everybody and get caught up on payroll taxes and all that stuff, right? And it was a miserable time, but it the funny thing about life, as you get older, and I'm sure this is not exactly like I went to Vietnam here, right? I mean, I do have perspective here. It's not the most miserable thing in the world, but you know, everything you do in life builds battle scars for you, and you know, those who can learn from that and not wallow in it are those who tend to come out the other end. And I'd like to think that's what's happened with me. And like I said, I've seen, at this point, I feel like I've seen almost everything, like in business or in whatever, every scheme out there, um, every form of advertising, and you know, you take your pick, and so it just, I feel like it's just using that playbook I've learned over the years. You know, I feel like that those like 65-year-old offensive coordinators in football who have been running, like, seen every gimmick system that's come out in offense, and they're like, yeah, we've seen this will be adjusted against next year, don't worry. And we'll go back to running a pro offense, you know. And so I feel like I just got this amazing playbook, and that time period really was formative in that.
Well, it's a killer skill set to have, right? To always be thinking long term and not worry about the little things or you know, some of the stuff that you've been through and knowing the pitfalls to avoid. And obviously it shows that if you've been running Modloft for 10 years. But how long did you sit there and sulk, like, before you decided I'm going to get up and try something again?
Yeah, I mean, I have an amazing wife who happens to be a psychologist, so that helped quite a bit. My dad actually came and both my parents, but my dad especially, came and stayed with me for like 3 months to help me close everything up, which was amazing. Seemed like 3 months anyways. Maybe it wasn't that long, but yeah, I spent a good year sulking. I got into therapy. I went to, you know, I had all these other ideas of things I wanted to. Well, first I was saying, how can I leverage what I learned from that business into my next career? And, you know, I could have gotten back into building websites, which is what we really was the value locked up in that company. I didn't really necessarily want to get into e-commerce immediately. There's some things I learned working with consumers is not always the most enjoyable thing. So I'm not sure I wanted to jump back into dealing with consumers, but there was sort of the enterprise version of website building and SEO knowledge and all that. And I did some consulting for a consumer electronics manufacturer, fairly big size one, and helped them on their e-com platform, and they're a direct to consumer business at the time that they were just launching. And so I did a little of that, and then I spent it was at least a year, maybe two.
Well, what was the first thing that, like, excited you enough to say I'm going to try this again?
Well, I mean, in hindsight, I wish I was bolder, but I wasn't. I didn't want to go right into my own thing again, because I didn't want to put risk capital in there. And that's another thing I learned. I've actually never learned that lesson, but a lot of people have learned, which is, you know, use other people's money, don't use your own. And I never learned that lesson. I still haven't today, really. But I didn't want to go out there and raise a friends and family round for some of the projects I've been working on or whatever. And so I was just doing this consulting work for a good 2 years and or something along those lines. And then an old buddy of mine who had done some venture work mentioned that he knew this woman that was in this dietitian in Manhattan. She was sort of the dietitian to the stars, and she had this idea for a daily newsletter / website that was sort of talking about health and nutrition in a fun, youthful way, as opposed to, like, you know, reading about vitamin D deficiencies or whatever in Men's Journal or whatever. You know, it was more tailored for the Us Weekly crowd. And so that was her idea. And so I met with, I flew to New York. I met with her, and we decided to do a friends and family round, a seed round there, and I came on as COO, and I completely almost abandoned everything I knew about e-commerce and went straight into content and newsletters and that fun stuff. And that was my next stage.
It was all like a newsletter business back then.
Yeah, so there were several. I mean, they still exist today in some respects, but there were several sort of modeled websites out there that existed in the news email and newsletter space. One was called Daily Candy, which ended up selling to Comcast down the road, but it was like a daily burst of like just stuff. And today, like what's the one today? So it's, man, I forgot the name. Swim? No, not Swim. Daily Swim. There's one out there that's like them today. But then on the mail side, there was like Thrillist and Urban Daddy and all these daily newsletters that still exist, by the way. Several of them do. And so that was sort of instead of like your mom forwarding you like ridiculous jokes every day or something in your AOL email, they were daily newsletters of health and nutrition advice, done really well, designed beautifully back in the day, and we built a content business. I hired an editor in chief that came from Us Weekly, and it was my first foray into not only a vertical I knew nothing about, health and nutrition, but also into content.
I didn't even know that was a thing back then, right? Like morning brew, the hustle, like huddle up.
Yeah, so now they're coming back, right? So now you have everybody building Substack emails,
right?
And people paying for it. Our business was purely, and all the ones back then were purely ad based. They were not subscription based. The Skim, it's called the Skim. If you look that up, SKIMM.
I didn't even know that was a thing back there. So
no, that exists today.
That would exist today. But like the ones you were running back then, what are they like? They just getting sponsored content to put inside the newsletter? Is that how they're monetizing this, or through? Is there affiliate links back then, or how are they monetizing?
There were affiliate links, yeah. So we were running. It was my first. We were running Commission Junction, and if you're familiar with that, and we were, those types of sites. I think there was another one out there just like them, Upper Jam, I think it was called, it was affiliate based. There was some ad spend, but we were a startup, so we didn't really care about making money yet. We were just trying to build readers. So it was a fascinating journey for me to learn how to build readers. Of course, I brought my SEO knowledge with me. We built a site off of Joomla back in the day, and I brought my SEO knowledge, and that was great. But we were, I got into the ugly underbelly of the world of buying email lists and stuff like that, which is still very ugly today. This was before double opt-in was really a thing. You could single opt-in into a list, and so you didn't have to legally, so you didn't have to worry about that. And this was really before, Amazon, Google was dropping people into like weird mailboxes and stuff. So you would always end up almost had a guaranteed delivery rate. And so it was all about open rates and click throughs and all that stuff. And it was a fun time.
So you mentioned that this, you specifically worded it as exited. Like, were you, was that company acquired?
Yeah. So, it's one of those things where, man, that was another fun time, but we had my partner, was, her husband and wife. They were a husband and wife team, both in there. I should have learned my lesson from working with friends. I worked with a couple, and that was not the best experience in the world. She had her own, my partner wasn't in the practice. It wasn't in the business every day. She was and still today runs a very successful dietitian practice. When I say successful, I mean I'm talking about people who in Upper East Side or Upper West Side that dropped 10K for like 3 sessions with her. And so, she that was sort of her lifeblood, and there were a lot of conflicts between her time there and her time in our business, and so on and so forth. And like she would get appearances on. We had a PR firm. She'd get appearances on the Today Show, and like what would be literally on the Chiron down there. Like what are we pushing her practice or this or whatever was kind of challenging. And so we and she had written a diet book that had been started getting really popular. So we ended up saying, this is just not going to go where we want it to be. I can send you a link here. This is her business today. We found, so basically part of this was that she had developed this diet that we were sort of tying into this website, if you will, and into this platform that we had built. And so there was a health food company that was interested in our email list. So they ended up buying the company, and they literally sunsetted it the next day. I had no idea that was going to happen, honestly. And so they took the readership and sunsetted the rest of it. And that the company that I'm showing you there right now is the portion we kept, or she kept. That's up love.
So I have to assume you had difficulties with friends. You had difficulties working with someone else in a couple that leads you to saying, I got to do this on my own.
You would think. I'm a glutton for punishment, man. Okay. I think one of my characteristics, it's sort of why I've always been sort of a C-class guy, is because if it wasn't for tech, I probably would have been a politician. I feel like I'm one of my sort of master skills is bridging communication between all kinds of interesting people, and being able to build sort of a consent, getting people to sort of agree on a certain thing or whatever. And so I learned from both working with friends and that crazy experience to them working with a husband and wife team that was insane as well. And I learned to sort of, again, it was sort of my secret power. And so I ended up, when that exited, and it wasn't people, when they say exit, like it seems like, oh yeah, you made millions. No, I mean, it was like a solid double or single. It was not a triple or home run. But it gave me a little bandwidth, and I did some more consulting work. And then my old buddy, again, there it is again, buddies. That old buddy that had originally been like a partner for like 5 minutes at my first company, and had mentioned the plasma TV thing to us. He said, let's grab some dinner. I flew into Miami, where I'm originally from and where he's based out of. And he told me about this crazy world of furniture. And I said, I don't know a damn thing about furniture. But at the time, that vertical had next to zero e-com presence. It's a vertical largely dominated by generational families. And I'm being kind by saying that, but very, very elder statesman in that business, and the notion of selling anything online was insane to them. We literally walked around with a scarlet letter at my first furniture market, and so he talked to me about all the trials and tribulations. I came in sort of as a consultant, and then later on as a partner. And the business had been around for a few years, but it really wasn't much of a business at that point. And we started building it, and that was about a decade ago. We're now seeing the fruits of it, but it was a long build for sure.
Well, you said in the early parts of the show how everything appears to be an overnight success, and we've spent an hour and 40 minutes and we really haven't even talked about the business that we're just getting to, like the genesis of this business that's doing extremely well for you 10 years later, right? And so like I love having people on here that can walk through that whole journey, because I at one point when I started this, I was like 29 or 30 when I started this. I felt the same thing of like, why am I not successful immediately? And now I'm only 6 years in, 7 years in, whatever it is, and I feel like I'm just getting started already, right? And so it's interesting to hear your long, windy journey, and also, see the flaws, honestly, in maybe seeking out other people to do it with. Maybe you weren't confident in yourself, or learning some hard lessons along the way. Like, I love hearing stories like this, and you're just getting to what is now, I would say a claim to fame for you, right? Like a great business that you're leading now.
Yeah, I think the key component, in hindsight, I maybe would have changed things a little, but things are, again, no complaints right now of where I am in my career. But I think I got turned off a little about using my own capital early on, and so I started gravitating towards others, whether it was friends and family round or my partners at Modloft are. One of our partners is, has put up most of the capital from day one. And so I didn't really have to, my risk was my sweat equity, and I love betting on myself. But I think I got a little too shy in hindsight from putting my own capital at play, which probably stopped me from doing a few other ventures.
Well, you mentioned earlier how you're not a commodity at Modloft, right? Like, I think on our little pre-call, you mentioned there's furniture you can buy from Amazon that comes in a box and you got to put together. And then there's IKEA, and you feel like you're, a few steps above that, right? Like you said, yours comes fully assembled. It's just a higher quality at maybe a cheaper price than that higher quality you would pay for elsewhere. But like, how did you acquire customers in the beginning? As you're beginning and starting out and you're trying to set yourself apart, is it just because you were online before anybody else was online, or how did you begin to like make a name for yourself in Modloft?
Yeah, so in many respects, it was just right back to the consumer electronics days, right? There was so little competition that it wasn't terribly hard to score some good keywords on SEO. You had there's always it wasn't like the internet was immature at that point. It was absolutely mature. E-commerce was mature, but it wasn't. This vertical wasn't. So you had all these people who were, everyone would say to me, "Who's going to buy a sofa on the internet?" By the way, the same people who said who would buy TVs on the internet, but
the same people who were saying, "Why would you buy a JPEG on the internet?" It's the
right,
same people.
Exactly. But I get it. Like I would want to sit on my sofa before I buy it. I'm a comfort guy. I want to make sure that I like it the way it feels, right? So I get the concept, but there's mitigating ways around that, right? Free shipping, free returns, 30-day free trials, that kind of stuff. And we have an extraordinarily low return rate. It's like sub 1%. And so, it's a. You asked how I was acquiring customers. We developed a strategy that was. We knew we didn't have millions of dollars in the bank. We could have went and got it, but and maybe in hindsight we should have, but we didn't have millions of dollars in the bank. We had we were bootstrapped, and so the way we decided to do it was to go the wholesale route. So we almost exclusively our business was wholesale at that moment. In the early days, we were selling to what is now called Wayfair. But back in the day, and for your listeners who don't know, Wayfair is a multi-zillionaire company now that literally like the only one who's successfully taken on Amazon in the modern day in a single vertical.
They started the same way you and your friends did, right? It was like a zillion different niche drop shipping sites that morphed into Wayfair.
Knew them. We knew Neerj and Steve, the two founders. Because they were in the same space. Their most popular website back in the day was called was it Plasma TV Stands and More or something like that. It was like they were selling accessories. But yeah, they built a network of under a company called CSN Stores. They built a network of I don't know, a couple hundred sites. Again, back then, domain authority meant everything. So if you wanted to rank for, I don't know, replacement light bulbs, if your website was called replacementlightbulbs.com, you had to really mess up to not rank on page one there, right? And so that was their strategy, and that was sort of our strategy back in my early days as well. And so we knew them, or I knew them, and we grew up with them. They decided to rebrand as Wayfair. There was another company that was doing similar things out of Nebraska called Net Shops. They ended up becoming a company called Hay Needle, which ended up being acquired by Walmart a few years back. So there's a sort of playbook there. Like I said, I've seen it all, but we put Wayfair went public and raised millions and billions of dollars, and they were spending all kinds of money acquiring customers. And so our goal back then was to leverage our wholesale accounts, not just them, but others, to get people introduced to the brand. And then it was our job to retain them and build word of mouth. And eventually, it was only about 5 years ago, about halfway in, where we decided to go direct to consumer. Even though our plan all along was to do direct to consumer, we wanted to build enough people out there that had boxes arriving in their homes with Modloft and leave behinds in their boxes to build branding equity. And by the way, it's probably a dirty secret, and I'll probably get killed for saying this, but like when you're in the drop ship business and you own and you're the one doing the drop shipping. I don't know if you've been on that side, or if you yourself have only been on the side, or you've only used distributors to drop ship their product, but we have the consignee mailing addresses, and in many cases emails from all these people, right? So anytime Wayfair sold something, they sent us an order. We knew their customer. We knew everything about their customer. We knew their phone number, their email, their everything. And in today's day and age, we were able to take that information and build audiences on Facebook and Instagram off of their customer. We wouldn't go out and solicit their customer, because that would be wrong. That was too gray for me. but we would build audiences around their friends and and so on and so forth. And that's how we sort of just started building this up minute by minute, day by day.
So is everything that you have from the beginning your own product? I guess I was under the impression that you were more of a retailer as well at Modloft.
No, so, in the early days, my partner, before I was even there, my partner was importing product that he found in Shanghai or whatever, Guangzhou trade shows. And we ended up coming to the conclusion again that if we were just selling, if we could buy it from that trade show, then so can a zillion other people, right? So we decided to start developing our own product about 8 years ago, and we almost everything we sell today, we designed and manufactured. But there are a few relationships where there's a factory or a brand internationally that has no presence in the U.S., doesn't know how to get their foot in the U.S., and so we are a master distributor of their product, but we rebranded as Modloft. But
yeah, I had no idea that you were almost exclusively making your own products. And how did I not know you were an SEO guy? How has it never like came up that you and I haven't shot the shit on SEO?
Because SEO is not cool anymore. Nobody wants to talk about it, man. Everybody's talking about Facebook audiences and Instagram audiences and whatever. But yeah, I mean, SEO is still my jam. I mean, I hardly know it like I used to, clearly, and the world has changed quite a bit. I don't think PageRank exists anymore, right? but yeah, I was an SEO geek.
I think you and Jeff Vogel and I could have a little SEO conversation sometime. That's the same thing for him, writing content, and that's what's made the businesses I've worked on or worked with through consulting. Like that's the big lever to pull, and I've got a lot to learn on the Instagram and Facebook side. And it sounds like right as I'm ready to learn it, it's going to get all kinds of wacky anyway.
Yeah, well, and SEO is kind of weird, right? Because you're one of the challenges of Modloft is we've positioned ourselves with our price point and our branding as a luxury brand, and luxury brands by rules sort of don't want to play the SEO game because you're possibly doing things that are not, even today we write an article for something and to drive traffic to our site, and we really don't want anyone to read it other than the people who are searching for it, because it's not really on brand, if you will, as far as speaking towards a luxury. It's like, it would be like Ferrari having, not to compare us to Ferrari, but it would be like Ferrari having schlocky blog articles to drive traffic to Ferrari.com. You don't want to do that. They don't want to see that. So it's been a really interesting balance trying to figure that all out. And we probably too often have landed on the side of let's build the brand and don't worry so much about the traffic. That came, there's a healthy balance there we're still trying to find.
Yeah, I think you might be better served with your branding to almost set up a PBN, if you will. I know those are, naughty words nowadays, but having multiple sites talking about luxury furniture and all, pointing back to you. Look, I know we're short on time. I only got 2 more questions for you. So what is the end goal for you with Modloft? Where do you hope to go? I know you're hitting big numbers. Is this like something you want to run forever? Is this something you're hoping to be acquired?
Yeah, I think, we have those conversations daily, or, quarterly anyways. We are in an extraordinary growth mode. I mean, we were already we had, all kinds of things going our way for a change. So we had the verticals finally starting to there's an audience of customers that are buying online now that never did before. That was pre-pandemic, and now, millennials for sure had no problems buying furniture online, but they weren't really our customer base per se back in the day. But now, 10 years later, they got money, and so they're buying. Then you have the pandemic buying, and people investing in their homes, all their disposable dollars, all that. We've just been at this intersection of insanely positive waves coming our way that are not going anywhere. And I think I posted about this the other day. We're up a considerable amount from last year over year, even though everyone's comping against that April from 2020. We crushed our April 2020. And this entire year we're going to crush last year, which was a fantastic year on its own. So we feel like those disposable, that the behavior of purchasing this product online is not going anywhere. It's only getting bigger, and our goal is to be a big part of that. Now, Modloft does live in sort of a niche of modern furniture, and so we don't sell to the IKEA crowd generally, and so there's not a lot. Not that there's anything wrong with the IKEA crowd, but that's just not our customer. So our customer does have a certain income base and so on and so forth. So I think that we got a lot of headroom left to grow in this. We're going to do it regardless of what our exit strategy is, but we have not taken on additional capital yet. We have not brought on strategic investors. These are all things we're constantly being bombarded with offers for, and we're looking at doing it, but thankfully we haven't needed outside capital to grow. We've been profitable for quite some time, and now we're wildly profitable, and investing every dollar right back in our inventory, right back in our customer acquisition, launching a new our website is 10 years old. It's a piece of crap. And we're launching a brand new website next month, June. Yeah, next month. And we still swim in wholesale markets. We still swim in direct to consumer, completely omni-channel. We have a brick and mortar location. We had 3 prior to COVID, down to 1 flagship store right now, but going to re-expand. And our goal is to see where this takes us. Exiting only helps if this ride isn't coming to an end anytime soon, so there's no like urgent need to get out. But we do feel like once we cross, and we're close to, but once we cross that sort of 9-figure place into that territory, that we're going to need additional funding. And if we do that, then it may be in terms of an exit or in terms of private equity or something along those lines.
Well, I'll save this last one is just a little bit of room for your micro rant. As a Miami kid living in California, tell me your small little rant on Miami versus California here.
Oh man, I'm like a black sheep because I love Miami. I grew up in Miami. I'm all for it, but I've also lived here 20 years in Los Angeles, and I could tell you the good, bad, and the ugly of Miami. Granted, things change, but Modloft's based in Miami. Pre-pandemic, I spent half my month in Miami, or half the year, I should say, maybe a quarter of the year, and so I know the town well. I get the sentiment, certainly from Silicon Valley. I get the sentiment of leaving there. That the cost of living up there is so insane. Nobody should have to spend $5,000 for like a 800 square foot studio, but my little rant, if you will, is that there's all these people that have fled, as been well documented, fled from California to Austin or Miami, or Nashville or Vegas or whatever, but largely Austin or Miami. And listen, those guys, there's a reason why there are no tax states. They were at their heart, they were no taxation because they were not desirable places to live. So they had to encourage people to move there by saying, come here and we won't take your money. Now, it's not, Miami's not quite the swampland that it was in the 60s. So there's obviously so many great parts of Miami now. But I do find it hilarious that a lot of these people have all moved in the last, say, 9 months, have not lived a summer yet in Miami, and I can't wait to. I'm sure the Kool-Aid will keep going even through the summer, but secretly they'll be wondering why they're showering 3 times a day, and and why all those wonderful pictures of them playing tennis and having cafe con leche outside in the patio. That they keep posting on Twitter about like why it rains all day long, and it's not just rain; it's like torrential rain in the summertime, and with global warming, summer is longer and longer these days. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I have like a visceral reaction to anybody who's like sitting there and they feel like they have to justify their decision for moving there, which again, there's some really valid reasons to do it, myself included. As I look at an exit in Modloft, the last thing I want to do is give 12% to California. So I get it. So trust me, I get it. And while I'm we won't get into politics, but I'm certainly understand the frustration of how extreme the politics to the left have gotten over here. So I get all that. But that being said, I just don't understand the mentality of like constantly telling people how wonderful it is over there and please move here. You got to move here and so on and so forth. And the reality is they're trying to will it into place. If you go look at, and I did this for fun the other day, if you go look at some of these companies that are the most vocal over there, the VCs that are most vocal over there, and you look at their portfolio companies and you see their job postings, and then you go see who's filling those job postings, they're not people that are native to Miami. They're bringing people from other parts of the country to come relocate down there, which is great. But don't tell me that Miami is a huge tech hub yet. It is not. It is not a. It is still largely. I won't go there, but it's not what they say it is. Let's just put that. I'm rooting for Miami. I'm a huge Miami Heat fan. I'm a huge Miami Dolphins fan. I love Miami. And I go there all the time. My parents are there. My family's there. But I just don't get the whole why we have to talk about it incessantly on Twitter and articles thing.
Well, the heat's enough to keep me away. I know my wife and I have discussed Florida or Texas or Las Vegas or anywhere to save, a little bit of taxes. And it's just like, I don't think I could do it. I don't think the heat I could stand, let alone being in Wisconsin. We have to deal with winters, but we don't get tornadoes. We have no poisonous bugs. We have no reptiles. We don't have that, just like choking heat with so much moisture in the air that you're just dripping all day long.
Yeah, and trust me, again, I live in Los Angeles. I understand earthquakes, right? So I understand that I don't live in a perfect place either, right? There is no perfect place for what it's worth. But the thing about earthquakes is, I've been here 20 years. I came here after the big Northridge one, so I didn't really experience that one. But the reality is, like, the pro and the con of it is you don't know when it's coming, right? So you can you live your life and you try it, and you don't really think about it. And in Miami and in Florida in particular, again, especially with global warming now and what's going on. I mean, we've seen all these hurricanes over the last 10 years or so, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And what's happening is that when they come, you have to when they form in the Caribbean, and they form in the Caribbean. You have two options as a resident in Florida. You either flee or you stay and buckle, put your shutters up and hope for the best. Either way, it's a complete disruption to your business. I mean, again, we have an office in Miami. Our Modloft's main office is in North Miami, and once a year we're shut down for a week because people are either fleeing or they have to stay home and put their shutters up or whatever. And then after the hurricane comes, even if it's just a tropical storm or whatever, the power goes out for a few days, and the flooding is, you can't drive to the office. I mean, it's just, again, pros and cons everywhere you live. Love it. I just, to say the greatest thing since sliced bread is just kind of humorous to me. That's all.
Well, I appreciate having you on and sharing your story. It was interesting to say the least, man. I think we went off on a bunch of tangents, but that's what I love about my own show. So appreciate you coming on. If anybody wants to reach out to you, buddy, what's the best way to do so?
Twitter's fine. It's Neil Kusens, NEILKUSENS. It looks like Kusens, but it's actually Cousins. So Neil Kusens at Twitter, or you can find me at Modloft. I'm sure one of my employees will point you in the right direction.
Well, I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for coming on, man.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
Big thanks to my buddy Neil for coming on the show. Thanks so much, Neil, for taking the time. I appreciate it. If you are in the market for elite modern furniture for your contemporary home, definitely check out modloft.com. I'll put that in the show notes. I'll put Neil's Twitter in there as well if you want to give him a follow. And like I said, I'll be back in a couple weeks. I'm going to take a week off in between episodes here for a little while, as likely next time you hear from me, I will be a new father. So bear with me, and thanks for following along. I appreciate all of you very, very much, and I will see all of you in a couple Wednesdays.